Jews bury themselves the way they live, crowded together, encroaching on one another's space. The headstones were packed tight, the bodies underneath elbow to elbow and head to toe. Kaddish led Pato through uneven rows over uneven ground on the benevolent self side. He cupped his hand over the eye of the flashlight to smother the light. His fingers glowed orange, red in between, as he ran his fist along the face of a stone. They were searching for Chezi Two-Blade's grave, and finding it didn't take long. His plot rose up sharply, his marker tipped back. It looked to Kaddish as if the old man had tried to claw his way free. It also looked like Two-Blade's daughter had only to wait another winter, and she wouldn't have needed to hire Kaddish Poznan at all. All the stuff that gets written that I can fold back in and pressurize the story and make 100 years into 90, into 80, into 70, down to 3 months, and, make 2 children into 1 child, and, get rid of Kaddish's, grandfather after writing that for a year, to just feed that all in. I have to believe that enriches that. That's what makes things live. The lightest way to say it is that everybody's busy. I better care about every word in there, if you don't need the other 90 years. But I do believe in a pressurized story. I think, again, all my publishers, they're very sweet, but my American publisher I delivered said, let's not take so long with the next one, But this was basically a 10-year book. I mean, that's what this one was, but I do believe, I really think I'd kill myself if I didn't believe in process. It was 1976 in Argentina. They lived with uncertainty and looming chaos. In Buenos Aires, they'd long suffered kidnap and ransom. There was terror from all quarters and murder on the rise. It was no time to stand out, not for Gentile or Jew. And the Jews, almost to a person, felt that being Jewish was already plenty different enough. Kaddish's clients were the ones who had what to lose, the respectable, successful segment of their community that didn't have in its family such a reputable past. In quieter times, it had been enough to ignore and deny. When the last of the generation of the benevolent self had gone silent, when all the plots on their side were full, the descendants waited what they thought was a decent amount of time for an indecent bunch and sealed up that graveyard for good. People are so shocked. They say, they read the novel and say, well, obviously, the things that you think I made up in this novel are what's straight out of the historical record, and what seems straight out of the historical record is what I made up. That's how I feel. People say to me they didn't really grab innocent college kids off the street and, torture them and drug them and throw them living and naked from airplanes into the river. So that is exactly what they did. As foreman from the Navy threw a career Army man from the window, he was thinking his last thoughts. A retired colonel, his uniform covered in the ribbons and medals of a military regime. All those decorations were upended along with him as the blood rushed to his head. A medal came loose and clanked against the street. A chest full of honors, and what good did it do him? I should have served in the Air Force, he thought. Then I would have wings. I guess what I want to look at is that the world is absurd, that fiction often is a dialing back. I feel like I dialed back this world many degrees to suit my fictional world, because the reality of, the time in Buenos Aires versus the reality of my Buenos Aires, it's so much crazier, literally insane what was visited upon those people. So, yeah, I think it's a reverse. But that feeling, where somebody says like, oh, it's... Again, whether it feels fabled or absurdist or upside down, that's all this was to me. It is an upside down world. It is insane, and it's actually almost an anchoring. I feel like I made it more realistic. With that, not even the time for a cynical upturn of the lips, he hit the Avenue of the Liberator, and along with the countless motions that make up a late night in Buenos Aires, that together are the heartbeat of any city in the world, Lilian Poznan turned her head on the pillow to have her last deep sleep before her fears turned real. I write distant, at least up until now. In a sense, part of the aesthetic choices for me, or what I like to do, is to hobble myself to be forced to imagine the whole world. People say write what you know. Everything I've ever written's been sort of based on write what you don't know. And for me to latch onto Argentina, I don't know, then it became really close to my heart. So I didn't set out to write a dirty war book in that way, but once I heard this story, I mean, it feels really close to me personally now that the book is done. Kaddish still wasn't sure if he was feeling anything, though he thought maybe his head had split into two. He felt a line up the middle of his forehead, a soft separation or something light. It made the oddest noise, so very distinct, an internal sound. He wondered if this is what deaf people heard, if, with the world around them turned off, they got such wonderful sound from within. It was like an egg cracking, and that's what Kaddish saw. It was as if his eyes were in backward, peering into the blackness of his empty head, and in its very center floated a very large white egg, so white as to be throbbing in its whiteness, so that against the blackness its edges seemed to glow. A 3-minute egg floating in the middle of his head. When the doctor had given his quick turn, a heavy silver spoon came down into the darkness. That was the sound Kaddish heard emanating from the inside of his head, the perfect echo of spoon against shell. I didn't make this choice. It wasn't a choice. I need to have the humor in this book for the reader to make it easy. That's not it. I do think it's essential to the structure. I don't think the book could hold without it. But for me, I think it's also part of a three-dimensional world. You know, back to the idea of realism to me, I just think, you know, if everyone's just kissing throughout the book, if it's all kissy-kissy, then it's a romance novel. That's what makes genre fiction. Like, if it's all I really think that that is the way the world functions, that people are going to their death and they make a joke, or they're critically ill and they make it. I really think that's how we keep our sanity. Yes, it is my world view in a deep, deep way. I think Kaddish would be acting just as he is, and that the world does balance that way. I mean, I guess I so crave a black and white world. Personally, I so deeply crave a black and white world. I grew up religious, and things were even just a lot of choices were just clear, yes or no, and the gray terrifies me and fascinates me. But I think also in that same way that I just think that you get both in every situation.